I got a real person of interest in this episode, all the way from Central Illinois. It's been a long time. Not, I guess, yeah, it's been a few years since I actually been face to face with this gentleman, but it's good to catch up with now the associate AD of communications at Illinois State University, Mike Williams, MC Willie. What's up, man?
Not much. How you doing, Derrick?
I'm good. It's good to see you. It's good to talk to you, man. It's
You
been a
too.
while.
Yeah, no, it's you know how in your former life in dealing with collegiate athletics, you know how crazy it is, especially at this time of year. So it's good to talk to you, get a little break from all the constant moving around of things we got going on right now.
Well, I appreciate you setting aside the time. You're right. Like we are talking off air that I've touched base with a few of the folks working in the industry. Of course, I don't lose connection with a lot of folks and still keep in touch with people. And I know it's super busy in February as you guys are knee deep in the winter sports season. I think indoor track's going to wrap up soon, and basketball we all know is going on. But and I think for you, are you still the main contact for football, gymnastics? You have anything else on your plate?
Yeah, I've got both tennises as well. So
Okay.
for the month of March, really March to mid-April, it's a lot for me because football comes back online with spring ball,
Yeah.
and then gymnastics is they're wrapping up their conference tournaments mid-March, but then we've had a lot of success here in the last couple of years with gymnasts going to regionals and even to nationals, and then tennis go until late April, early May. So that stretch is quite busy for me. But we'll get it all taken care of. But it's a lot of fun. I love working with all those teams and enjoy kind of getting to know those student athletes and coaches and being around them as much as I can.
I've talked to a few folks in the podcast that work in college athletics, some various different levels. But I think the one thing that probably sets you apart that I'm curious about is how you do it being a father. It's not a 9 to 5 job. I think the folks that we know that work in the industry know that you know football games are on weekends. Afternoon, sometimes evening games, but sporting events. If you're not hosting a conference championship, it's not a 9 to 5 gig. But you've been able to sort of figure that out a little bit, and with the two girls, and make things work. And it's pretty cool that they come out to games often and get to hang with the cheerleaders. What's been the key to keeping fatherhood afloat and working in sports information at the college level?
I mean, one, I've had really good mentors in my career that I've asked a lot of those same questions: as how
Yeah.
did you do it? And I've been able to lean on those guys throughout my time working in college sports. But it's really about making a conscious effort to make that time and to find that time. And one of my things is, and I'm always taking work home, but I always make sure that when I do get home, I try not to touch it until after the girls are in bed. If that means I'm staying up till midnight working on something, fine, but I try not to do it when I'm at home so I can at least get to spend some time with them and see them, ask them how their days were. My oldest daughter is big into competitive cheer and softball right now. So I also coached her team last year. So I was
Okay.
trying pretty much any time that I had left, I was either running her to practices or I was going to practices with her and helping coach. So it's I try, the time is tough, and especially, in this season, the crossover seasons that we call in college athletics, they're really tough because, I did I did a gymnastics meet and then two tennis meets just last weekend. So your whole weekend can be shot with
Yeah.
an event, but you go there for 3 hours and then you make sure when you go home, you're not still working and you're still not doing those things for those 3 hours. So that's kind of how I go about doing it. That's how I try to prioritize it. And then in the summers, when things do calm down a little bit and things aren't as crazy, then I'm trying to be more present, and I'm trying to go on some family vacations and spend some time together. Or, with my daughter, I was coaching her all last summer,
Right.
so I was with 2-3 games a week and practices and everything else. So we were able to spend that time together, which was really nice.
How's coaching been? How did you like that experience?
I I realized, I mean, it's we're talking 10U softball here,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
not too crazy. Now the cheer stuff, I don't go anywhere near. Luckily, luckily one of my best friends from college, my roommate, his wife is a coach at a gym here in town, and for years had been talking to my wife about, Edelman really enjoys cheer. She did a lot of clinics here at ISU, did some clinics at our high school in our hometown that we're living in. So she really liked cheer, but it never got involved. And Marissa finally bugged us and bugged us and bugged us enough to get her in there. And she did it last year for the first time and just fell in love.
That's awesome.
So it's become a whole different thing. But for me, I'm a supporter there. I'm basically a super fan. All the dads dress up. We look like idiots, and we loud and crazy and try to support our girls. But then on the softball side, I can help there a little bit more. Now this year she's going into a travel ball, and I'm just basically a bench coach.
Okay.
I'm just helping out with the scorebook, which I know how to do very well from my years working in sports information, and just helping the girls get on and off the field. So I'm not actually coaching this year,
Okay.
which I think will be actually better for me, because there were a lot of nights where I was trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? What do I was worried about lineups and things, and then I'd have to always kick myself. Hey, these girls are 10. As long as they're having fun and they're learning a little something,
Right.
we're doing the right things here. So, but it was great. I wouldn't have traded it. My wife was our pitching coach because she pitched in high school. So, and these girls do, fast pitch now. So I didn't know how to touch that at all. So she handled that, and we worked together on it. And it was a good family time.
Yeah.
It was a good time to be together. And with me being so busy, and my wife's a teacher, so she's obviously very busy with her schedules at the high school. So that summertime was actually really, really nice. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes this year, um, with it being a little bit different and honestly more intense. A
I
lot
was
more
gonna
games
say, yeah.
with travel ball stuff.
Yeah, gonna step up the competition a little bit there, I
Yeah,
assume, right? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, that's good to know. So I guess as now we talked, I mentioned at the onset here that you just recently got the promotion to the associate AD communication. But you've been leading the department for, a number of years there, and I almost think you sort of have a Mike Williams communications tree of your own now. Like, you've got some folks that have gone on and done some other things that started out as GAs under you and working in the industry. Um, I can think of some folks off the top of my head like Shelby and Zach Wadley and kids like that. But what is the one thing that you try to instill? Because the one thing I remember the best from working in the valley and being around you guys and what you guys had is you always had a good stable of GAs, and they always were like they were working. Like, they weren't there to just sort of like shadow. They were given responsibilities to do. And that sort of seems to be the Illinois State communications way of doing it. It seems like it's been that way for years. I think it was that way for you when you probably were in that role. What's been that I guess the process of getting those GAs up to speed, and how you mentor them to, figure out if this is something they want to do in the long run.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to the way I was taught with Todd Cobra when he first hired me, and it goes back probably even farther to that with Kenny Mossman, who went on to a great career at Oklahoma after he left here at Illinois State. Um, it's more so about giving them a toolbox of things that they can use, whether or not they stay in collegiate sports or not. And it's changed. I mean, it's
Yeah.
even from when I first got into the business, I my first internship was in 2004. So
No social
almost 20
media.
years now. Yeah, no social media, even websites, and the way
Yeah.
they worked was way different. We were still using fax machines back then, so like it's definitely changed. But I tell even our interns and especially our GAs, like, I want to give them an opportunity to own whatever it is that they're doing. And now, in especially in collegiate sports, there's so many different ways our GAs can go. I mean, CSC, or formerly known as COSIDA. I'm very involved with college sports communicators, and they just expanded to include creatives and video
Okay.
and designers and graphic designers and all kinds of things, because we all have to do that stuff at some
Right.
point in time. So what's interesting now for me, whereas before I was just making sure that somebody could come in and write a sentence and handle some game notes and have enough of a personality to deal with media and coaches. Now I'm trying to figure out, okay, it really takes me a full year with a GA to figure out what their passion is. I've got a second year GA that's getting ready to graduate, that's actually taken over our women's basketball duties. Um, and he's extremely talented on the social media side of things. So there's a part of me that really wants to foster and grow that part for him. But yet there's still parts of me that are like, hey, we still got to do kind of the old school day to
Right.
day SID stuff and make sure that that's getting taken care of as well. Um, but I also know that he could go, when he goes looking for a job here in May after he graduates, and there's tons of collegiate creative jobs that aren't necessarily sports information related, that he can get into and have a long career on if that's what he wants to do. He can take that and work for 3 4 years in college athletics and go do something in the private sector.
Yeah.
It's 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 all about equipping them with a work ethic, because I think no matter what you do, I've tried to instill that in our people here, and the job is tough. The hours are long. The pay is not good. We all know what the the hangups in working as a staff member in college athletics can be. But if you have a work ethic and you're willing to learn from mistakes and continue to improve in whatever it is that you're passionate about, you're going to be able to take that somewhere. And that's kind of what I've told them. I tell that to our interns that work for us. We're lucky to have a great relationship with the School of Communication here at ISU. Tom LaMonica, who helps run that system and provides us with really good interns every year. Some that turn into GAs, some that never work in college athletics ever again. But it's just working with them to find out, hey, what are you good at? What do you like to do? Is it photography? Is it writing? Is it graphic design? And then trying to put them in places of success with regards to what those skill sets are. And because we need all the help we can get. If I
Right.
get an intern that comes in and says, hey, I really like doing social media stories and stuff on Instagram. Okay, that's great. You come to the basketball game, you do my game in-game story. I can put somebody else on my Twitter feed, and then I can worry about handling media, and we can piecemeal the thing together, because the job's not as easy as it used to be. It used to be a one man job. It's just not, or
Yeah.
one woman job. I mean, it's just not that anymore. You need help, and nobody can do everything on their own. It's branched out and become this whole new ball game. So I try to find people first and foremost that have a passion for working in sports, because that always helps. And then it's somebody that's going to work hard and be willing to learn. I can teach you everything else.
That's
I
key.
figured that out. We have people that can teach you to be a better graphic designer or a photographer or a writer or whatever else. The actual skill set's easy. The attitude and the mindset's not. So I got to try to find that first, and then teach them the other skills and cultivate them while they're here. And then hopefully by the time they leave, if it's a GA in 2 years, they're ready to go do whatever it is, whether it's in sports or whether it's in the public sector doing, something else. And we've had pretty good success with that. I still talk to a lot of our former GAs, and that was honestly kind of one of the fun things about when I made the announcement of the promotion, was just to see who sent messages and who sent texts. And it was everything from interns that first started when I first came back in 2009 after my 2 years at Indiana State, to Roger Cushman, who was the first ever SID at this university, who I've gotten to know over the years, who's now retired and living in warmer weather.
That's awesome.
He sent a note. So it's all about building relationships and working with people, and that's the best part of this job to me.
All
Is
right.
is
You hit on something I was just going to lead into. You said the word relationships, and I was wondering. So you, along with everyone, most of the other folks that I still keep in touch with from my time in the Valley, are pretty much the people that are like the like if the Mount Rushmore could have just like several people on it because of their longevity and because of the way they do the job, it's impressive. I don't know, like you, Mike Kern, Jack Watkett. I mean, just so many people that have just done it so long. But when you hear the people talk about, the struggles about working in college athletics and specifically in sports information, um, that to me goes out of the window because of people like you and Mike and Jack, because you figure out a way to keep doing it. You've done it for so long. How? You talked about time management. I know that's a key to it
Yeah.
at the beginning of it. How have you done it for so long? Because I can tell you, like, heck, I only lasted 8 years in the Valley before I was sort of like, I don't want to say I got bored, but just another opportunity popped up. But you've been stable there, you've made it work, and you've, cultivated those relationships with, GAs, interns, coaches. It seems like that's like, Illinois State is the perfect fit for you. And I know you're from Central Illinois, so I know that's one reason too. But how in the world have you been able to do it for so long?
I I think for me, it's it's been trying to stay consistent with no matter what I was doing, whether it was the work, whether it was the relationships, whether it was the way I deal with people across campus, whatever it is just being even keeled and being consistent the whole way out. And I've honestly learned a lot about that from our head football coach, who I've worked with now for 15.
Nice. Okay.
Coach Spack and I have become very close over the years. When I first came back as an assistant at the time in 2009, when I was working at Indiana State for 2 years as an assistant, got the opportunity to come back to ISU. And that's the one thing I've always loved about Coach Spack is that I've seen him get mad, I've seen him get really upset, but in public spaces, in front of media, in front of everybody, he's always just even
you know,
keel. And 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 I've had that. Nobody, if anybody in that has worked in sports as long as I have, and there's certainly people even in our league that have worked longer, like Rick Heinhart
yeah.
and a bunch of other guys over the years, some of that have retired, which is really weird that guys are now retiring. I'm like, man, you guys aren't that old, and I'm not that old, am I? That you guys are getting out of the business, but um, there's just a consistency to the way they work, um, and and they seem to just kind of keep an even keel.
Yeah.
People change, coaches change, administrators change.
Yeah.
It's just the way college athletics works. And there's been times, I mean, I've gone through some really weird situations here in my time as the chief communicator at Illinois State, whether it be with administrative changes. Unfortunately, we had a tragic plane crash that we all had to deal with and go through. Um, but that's been the one thing that I've ever heard when I've talked to people. They're like, "You're always just solid. You're always just there." And I think that has a lot to do with how I was raised and how my parents taught me. Our family has always been that way. My dad is very stoic, very, that's just how he's always been. And he worked at the same company for 40 years.
Okay.
So it's there's a little bit of a loyalty factor to it. There's a little bit of a factor of what else am I going to do? I've literally spent 20 years of my professional life doing one thing. That's obviously changed a lot in that time, but I've still only done the one thing for
Yeah.
20 years. So there's there's a part of me that if I leave, what would I do? Where
Yeah.
would I go? What would I do? And there's been people that have. I know a lot of good people that have worked at Power Five schools that have left in their mid 40s, early 50s and done complete career changes just because the business has changed and they didn't want to do the day to day rat race of everything. Um, and I think that takes a lot of courage because I've had a lot of those conversations internally and with my wife about what would I do next? What would that look like? Could I go work at a country financial or a state farm and work in corporate PR? I'm sure I could. I have the skills. I know that. But would I be happy doing it? You know,
Right.
would I be fulfilled in the work? And I don't know, because I've never done it, and I don't know, and I'm glad that I don't have to right now. That was what was has been so interesting, here in the last, I'd say, at least a year, with Dr. Jerry Beggs as their interim AD, and she's changed some staff over and adding Paul Cabas as their deputy AD, and some other, and a lot of really good conversations. Just, where do I fit? How do you guys see me? How can I be an asset? And every AD, every person that I've worked with from an administrator has had a different idea on that. And I think that's the same anywhere in college athletics. Um, and unfortunately, sometimes that idea, or that answer, is not what you want. That
Yeah.
answer is, they don't see a lot of value, or they don't see a lot of ways that you can help them. But I think over 15 years now, since being back, and in 12 years and sitting in the assistant AD chair, they've seen that. They've seen that I've been able to get through some really tough situations with a steady hand. And I haven't done that alone. I've done that with staff. I've done that with a lot of phone calls to people across the country. I've done that with good mentors, and it's not. It's that's all going back to this. It's all about relationships. It's a whole reason why I got into the public relations field in the beginning. Now, I started my career wanting to be the next great American sports writer. I thought I was going to work for a newspaper. Man, I'm glad I didn't make
I
that
was gonna say,
decision.
yeah.
um,
You would have been making a career change at this point in
yeah,
time.
yeah, that career change would have happened a long time ago, had that would have been the difference. But when I got into public relations, that relationships part of it is what I liked about this so much, because I could still write, I could still tell stories, I could still do all of those things that a sports writer could do in this role. But there is so much about working with the media and working with your student athletes and coaches and people across campus and alumni and season ticket holders and all
Yeah,
the different people that I run into and speak with on a regular basis. So it's just so important. And for me, you know, I love this place. It's where I met my wife. It's where I went to school. I don't know that, had I stayed at Indiana State and maybe gone somewhere else and not had that opportunity to come back here in 2009, that my story wouldn't be completely different. And I may not have ever, I may have only worked in sports for 5, 6, 7 years, as opposed to now almost 20.
right.
So, you know, God has a plan for sure,
There you
and I,
go.
I fully believe that. And I've had a lot of weird things happen here in my personal life. It's been, I look back, and there's been crazy things that have happened, but the one constant has always been the work. I've always enjoyed it. There's been hard days, and there's been days when I wanted to quit and go do something else, but usually that lasts for a couple days or a week or a month, and then it kind of fades again, and something good happens, and you get renewed. And that's why I like about this sports and working in sports is, especially at a place like Illinois State, who's been pretty successful across the board in a lot of different sports. There's always something to look forward to. There's
Yeah.
always something to be excited about, and that's, I think, why I've stayed in it as long as I have, and continue to be excited to want to continue to do it, for the foreseeable future.
I think one of the keys also too is that I remember that I always enjoyed was that no day was the same. Even when we didn't have any sports, so in the conference office, for us it was all about, it was event based. It was conference championship. It was tournament time. But it was always something different that was going to be okay. How do I maneuver this and make this happen? But then when you did get to the tournament, the championship, whatever it was, whatever the event that was coming up, then you knew it was really going to be a different day. And when it was game day, you never knew what you're going to see. So I'm glad you said that. That sums it up pretty well. And actually, it's pretty in common with that sums it up pretty well. And actually, it's pretty. A lot of are there, and being a rock, being consistent. And you said, your connections with student athletes and coaches, similar thing. A lot of folks talk about their connections with just students and teachers and staff, and realizing they're doing it for their why kind of thing. So it's funny to know is that, like me, I went from the valley to a school district. A lot of folks have actually gone from
Mhm.
school PR or from college athletics to doing K-12 school communications too. So a lot of similarities I hear in what you just described in your answer to what I've heard from some folks that work in school communications as well. So um, behind you is something that I have to ask about, because I knew that you like were into it, but I had no idea the level that now it's almost like it's extreme based
Yeah.
on the amount. But I had no idea that you were. I guess I call you a bobblehead collector. Are you a bobblehead
I am.
aficionado?
I am. It's
Now,
weird
okay,
because
before you
yeah.
answer, do you seek them out, or is it just, oh, there's a White Sox game, they have a bobblehead, I got to get to the game, or are you like going to eBay looking for them? Are you to that level?
No, I'm not to that level.
Okay,
I honestly, the majority of it just started, working in college sports, you run into them.
right,
Bally gave out one a couple years ago of the trophy from the men's tournament. Um, when I was working in Indiana State, we gave out a Larry Bird one because we had a reunion. So it kind of started that way of just, and I'm a big White Sox fan,
yeah,
and I've gone to games for my entire life, and we've picked them up periodically. My dad even has a few, and so it started more that way. I do know people. I'm on some chat
I
rooms and blogs and things that, I mean, they are serious about it. The only money that I spend on these are a lot of times ones for the White Sox that are done for charity. So the White
okay,
Sox have done one or two a year. I think it's typically what they've done. And they've done a special bobblehead that you can only buy. They don't give it out at the gate. You can only buy it and it goes to charity. So those are really the only ones that I have bought. I don't now there are in my White Sox fandom side, there are a couple golden gooses out there, but to your point, I'm not willing to spend $350 on eBay
okay.
for like I'm just I I gotta pay going back. I gotta pay for cheer competitions and travel softball. I don't have
Yeah,
time to spend $350 on a bobblehead. But
you,
the other cool thing is I've I've obviously picked some up. I'm a big sports fan, so I've picked them up at games and I've picked them up at things. I've actually won some on like
oh,
giveaways.
okay,
My newest one I got was just one of those like and retweet and we'll send it to you type things. And there's several of them up there that I've gotten that way. Um, and and then the cool part is going back to the relationships. I've had people send me some.
yeah,
I've had you know good friend of both of ours, Scott Warman, picked up a Paul DeYoung one from the Springfield Cardinals that they had given out. Well, obviously Paul's an ISU alum, and
right,
the connection. So a couple years ago when we hosted the MVC baseball tournament, Scotty brought that up for me and added it. And I've had friends that work in minor league baseball send them to me, and I've had friends that work at the Bulls and the Blackhawks send them to me. Former interns and people that I
yeah,
worked with here that are now working up there. So I would say about half of them were sourced by me at games or garage sales or random things like that. I'd say probably the other 2/3 are ones that people have sent to me, and then the other third of that or whatever, I'm bad at math, but whatever the rest of that is ones that schools have done
okay,
or local places have done that I've picked up, and it's there's some weird stuff in there. I mean, it's majority White Sox, Bulls, Blackhawks. There's a little bit of Bears, but like there's a Jenny Finch one right there. I can see it. That a friend was cleaning out stuff in their basement, just gave it to me. It's just I have random ones that are like that, and then I do have. It's kind of hard to see, but that far side you can't really see it. You can kind of see the Doug Collins one in there, but that's my Valley section. So I do
okay,
have the Valley Trophy that they gave out a couple years ago. I have my Larry Bird one. I have Sister Jean up there, and I have the one I really adore is Paul Morrison.
Okay.
Drake gave one out to commemorate Paul's 100th birthday, actually. And I actually, when I first got into the business, got to meet Paul, and was when I was traveling. And I'm sure you've
Yep.
met Paul in your time at the Valley. Just tremendous dude, and as a young guy who literally just got into the business, to sit next to him at courtside when you're working a game at the Nap Center, and just hear him tell stories was amazing. So
Yep.
I love that one, and people see it and they're like, "What is that?" And I love telling that story because it all goes to to why I'm here. If people
Yeah.
like him and didn't, take the time when I was a very, very young person in this business to take an interest in me, or to answer my questions, or talk to me, or just make me feel like I belonged, there's no way I'd still be here. And he didn't have to do that. He didn't know me. I was just some punk kid coming in from at the time it was Indiana State when I was coming in with basketball. And I'd been out of grad school for a year at the time. He didn't have to be nice to me, but he
Yeah.
was. Guys like Mark Stillwell
Yeah.
and Tom was in that group for a long, long time. Those guys that had been working for 30 years at one school didn't have to be nice to me, and don't have to be nice to this day to me, but they did. So it's cool that you can form relationships with people, and just get a little connection. Now I'll tell you, they're only here because my wife won't allow them in the house.
I was gonna say, are those? My next question was gonna be, are there any at home?
No, there are none at home. There are zero at home, and they're all here. So it's kind of fun because people come into the office and they're like, oh, we'll
Yeah.
we'll get riffing about it, and but
How
yeah,
many do you
it's
have?
fun.
How many do you
It's
have?
over 70. I
Okay,
have
that's not
lost
too
count,
many.
but it's over 70, and
That's not
you know
too bad.
the key problem here, though, is that I do have friends that work at the White Sox and things like that. So just about every year now, about the after the end of the baseball season, November, right before Christmas, I'll just have a random box show up, and there'll be about four or five of them in the box, and then I'm like, oh no. And some I already have, which is really depressing because when they come, but then I've got other White Sox fans and people I can give
Yeah.
them around to, but it's just fun. And I even have, I don't know if you know Kevin Trainer, but Kevin is
Yeah.
works on committees with me with CSC and has become a good friend and mentor. Kevin knew I was a White Sox guy. Well, Arkansas had given out some bobbleheads at baseball, one of Dallas Keuchel, who was playing for the White Sox at the time, and the other one of Andrew Benintendi, who's now at the White Sox. He's now sent Arkansas ones to me because of the connection to the White Sox
Right
and
side. Yeah.
seeing them on a Zoom call that we did for a CSC thing. So it's all about, people think, I have fun with it. If they all have some kind of connection. They all have
Yeah.
a story. There's nothing really super, super random up there that I don't have some kind of a story or connection to. So it's kind of fun.
What's your favorite one? If you had to get rid of them all, but you can only keep one, which one are you keeping? I have a thought, but I'm not sure if I'm
Well,
gonna be
one of
correct.
them that I really enjoy is the James Robinson one that's up there.
Okay.
It was one that was done. Now it's him in a Jaguars uniform, but it was done by the folks at the Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum, which I
Oh,
just went to
okay.
visit in Milwaukee when I was telling you about Milwaukee, which was a blast. Um, but they actually produced that and worked with us here at ISU to kind of help get the word out on that one. So I really like that one because obviously I saw every snap of James's
Okay.
career when he was here. So that one's pretty special. The Coach Spack one is great. I love that one. One because it's just spot on. It's perfect. It's probably one of the most lifelike and realistic ones of any of them that are up there. Um, and then I'd say the other one that I really have. There's a Carlton Fisk one. He was my favorite player growing up, and it was probably, if not the first, it was one of the first ones I ever got. And
Okay.
it doesn't look. The ones now are so lifelike and
Yeah.
and they're very well done. This one looks nothing like him. It's got the really like big chunky head on it and the chunky body. Like it's very different. It was probably done in the early to mid thousands. Um, so that's probably the oldest and probably the one that kind of started the whole craze. So I'd say those are probably some of my favorite ones.
I was gonna guess either Coach Spack or Doug Collins. So
Well, the Collins one's creepy.
really,
I It's it doesn't really look like Doug. I love Doug, and I've been fortunate enough to be called, to be around him many times over his career here, but it's not the best likeness. So I bury it a little bit back with some of the other ones. I told him, I was like, one of these days with one of these new companies and how good the 3D renderings are of these things, we need to do a
get a
new
new one.
Doug
Yeah,
one, because that one is the bird one is spot on. The bird one we
yeah.
did at Indiana State is great, but Collins one has a little bit left to the imagination, I think.
That's hilarious. This has been fun, man. I didn't realize you had so much in you to go, but I could go another 45 minutes with you. But I know
No.
it's the middle of the workday. This has been super fun. I guess if you don't mind, can you share with the folks if they were interested in learning more, about the business, working in college athletics, platforms you're on, how if you want to share your social media connection. I know you're active on Twitter now, X, and whatever we're calling it now. So
Yeah, no, I that's the one part of this business that I've had to learn how to be good at because I was not an early adopter to even going back way back to Facebook. I was late to that game. But no, I'm on all the social medias. You can usually find me ISU McWillie, MCWILLI. And it's funny because people do call me Willie now, and they're like,
I
why?
go
And
with MC Willie.
it's solely because of that email. ISU, just that's how they make their emails.
Yeah.
It's your first, it's your first name, first initial, middle initial, and then it's usually the first 5 letters of your last name. And they can kick it 2 or 3 if you're, a pretty common name or something. But when I came back, it was McWillie, and it just stuck. It just stuck. So I'm either Mike or I'm Willie, depending on how long you've known me or been around me. Valley staff, it's Willie. Most of the staff here, it's Willie. Most of the people I've worked with over the years, it's that. If you talk to my fraternity brothers, it's a completely different name. I won't go into that.
Different
Yeah, you can
podcast.
find me on all of those. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm always interacting with people and trying to help, either current people that I work with or even some young staff people. I've been able to, through CSC's mentorship program, been able to get to know some staff from all around the country and try to help them out, and pay it a little bit forward from those guys that
There you
have been
go.
in the business a long time, like Tom and like Rick and Mark and Tom LaMonica before him.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do the same, although I still don't feel like I'm in those guys' leagues, even though I've been in their colleagues for 15 years. But those guys have been institutions at their institutions, and have done such a great job. So I'm hoping to do that for some younger folks that are getting into the business, and to impart whatever wisdom I can, and tell them some things I've learned from some very interesting things that have happened in and around Illinois State athletics in the last 15 years. So,
Hey, it's the experiences, the connections, and relationships. You nailed it. I think that probably sums up everything we've been talking about. So, hey, you're well on your track. You are like I said, you're definitely one of the people. When I first got to the Valley, everyone was like, "This guy knows what he's doing," and that kind of thing. So, and the promotion is well deserved. Like I said, keep doing you, man, and I'm super proud of you getting that title change and just you being you. So you've always been one of my favorites. I appreciate you taking time to do the podcast with me too.
well, thanks so much, Derrick, and I feel the same way about you. We miss you in the Valley, but glad you're having so much success outside of college sports. And this podcast is awesome. Like I said, I've listened to several episodes, whether it be with people I knew or had common connections with, or people I never heard of before. So keep doing the great work on the podcast, and I really appreciate you having me as part of it.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Derrick.